I woke up this morning with new wisdom on my mind. I know who I am. There's no need to hide. I got something to say. I'm thinking that it's time. Why? Cause I'm a young intellect. I'm a young intellect. I'm a young intellect. I'm a young intellect. Pay me my respect.
You are now tuned in to the Young Intellect podcast, an open space where experiences and opinions are welcomed, hosted by Andreas, Sam, and Mafwa. Hello and welcome, Young Intellects. This is your co-host Mafwa, welcoming you to our open space to teach, learn, laugh, and love.
And I'm your co-host Sam, here to encourage you to explore different ways to view the world at large. Gonna be here with us today. She's not feeling so well, so please send her some prayers and pray for her health and well wishes and all that great stuff. Send her positive vibes and energy, and she'll be back with us soon.
Yes, we're wishing, Anne, if you're listening to this, we're wishing you the best, and let's just all come together. Maybe in a picture that we drop, you guys just send her some love in the comments on our Instagram at the Young Intellect. Just comment and tell her that you wish her the best, and
Yes.
where she'll be back soon.
Wow, oh my God, it's February, the second month of 2021. It just felt like 2021 just got started.
It does. It feels like it's supposed to be January 1st. Like, where's time going? But okay.
Yeah. So it means that this month is Black History Month. It's Valentine's Day, but it's Black History Month this month. And hosts are black. So happy Black History Month.
Happy Black History Month.
So for this episode, we want to discuss a topic that's not really, talked about in the Black community, which is kind of like finances. We are very vocal about political issues and social issues, but it kind of gets crickety when it comes to like our finances. The irony of it all is that financial awareness is what can actually help us become respected and improve our political status and be treated as better human beings. So for that, we wanted to talk about finances.
Yes, definitely normalizing conversations on finances, especially as a community, is going to do us so much good. So we shouldn't shy away from it because, as Sam said, um, that's our financial awareness and capabilities is what is going to help our political and social status. So we need to start there as a people.
Amen. That's true. So let's talk about Black purchasing power.
Black purchasing power. So I actually don't know the definition. I would say the definition of black purchasing power is just the amount of money that black people spend. So the amount of money black people spend. So their purchasing power, and as of 2019, it was 1.4 trillion US dollars.
Um, that's a lot.
Yeah, that's a lot of money. And just to put into perspective for you, that is higher than the gross domestic product, so the GDP of Mexico.
Mm-hmm.
And it is projected to grow to $1.8 trillion by 2024. And the purchasing power of African Americans in the US is outpacing the purchasing power of white people. So it doesn't mean that it's higher, it just means that it's growing at a faster rate.
That's the rate.
So, yeah, we're just spending more each year. And so to put into a bit more perspective for you what purchasing power is, the purchasing power that we have, if you combine the purchasing power of minorities, so not just African Americans, but Asians and Latinas, even though they can be black or white. It's just there's a bit of grey lines there, but the purchasing power of minorities in America is $3.2 trillion, which in 2019, which is higher than the UK's nominal GDP, which is $2.8 trillion.
So I find it kind of interesting that the black dollar actually lasts like 6 hours in black communities. Not even like 24, not even a full day, only 6 hours, not even half a day, which is 12 hours, only lasts 6 hours. In other communities, for example, like the Asian communities, the dollar it's there lasts 30 days. And in Jewish communities, their dollars last 20 days. And the white communities, their dollars last like 16 days. So like for us, like we have the lowest, like within our own community, we have the lowest amount of time that the money can circulate in our own community.
Mm. And we have probably the highest growing purchasing power.
Mm-hmm.
And that is because, our spending habits, one, we're like top consumers. We're like, we're not top at much, but consumerism, we're definitely at the top. And also because in our communities, um, other communities are aware of our purchasing habits and they take advantage of it. They set up shop right in our backyards because they know that there's certain products that we like and
Mm-hmm.
there's certain things that we spend money on. So they bring those businesses into our community so they can take our money, and that's why our money only lasts 6 hours in our community, as you said. Um, because they come into our community, they set up their businesses, and we buy from them. So it's going
Mm-hmm.
from the black pocket to another community, and it definitely boils down to us not taking control of our communities.
That's very true because everyone else has like things that they own. Like I'm not saying like people don't own stuff. We're starting, we're growing, but in general, like as a group of people, everyone has everyone has to have their stuff that they own. Like you see the people have the gas station. Some people have their gas station. Some people like everything else is made in China. So all this money that we're spending, even like the hair products that we buy as women or where we go to purchase hair is usually an Asian person. We don't really go to like a black what's it called,
Black owned.
like beauty supply stores. Most beauty supply stores, when you go in there, it's always somebody that's other than black. So they're making so much money off of us creating products that we utilize, and we're giving all our money away to other people. So that money that we're giving away to them is circulating within their own communities, but it's not circulating within our communities because we're not spending any money in our own communities because a lot of us don't have don't own stuff that these people own.
Exactly, and they do loads of research on our spending habits. Like it's a thing where they know how we act consciously more than they're aware of our conscious actions more than we're aware of them. And this is why they set up these types of shops, because they know that we are heavy into music, we are heavy into beauty, we are heavy into the arts and stuff like that. And when it comes to food, we like particular types of food. So they set up these businesses so they can capture that $1.4 trillion that we are spending. And $1.4 trillion is a lot. So they're like, you know, we're taking it. Let's get a piece of the pie, and they're taking the biggest pieces of the pie, and we take the smallest piece of our own pie because our money only lasts in our community 6 hours.
Mm-hmm. I once heard somebody said something. It says that like black people do not own culture, but we create it. And I was like, oh, that's a really good way of putting it because I do feel like black people create a lot of stuff, but it's that ownership that actually give you power. When you own stuff, that's when people come to respect you. That's when like you have more money. It just ownership is actually very important. And I feel like that's somewhere that we kind of like fall flat in comparison to other people.
Exactly. And I think a reason why we fall flat is because we don't know the power of ownership. And
Mm-hmm.
two, um, you know, because we've been second so long, or we haven't had things for so long, what they do is like, you know, they don't even care about owning it. They just care about being in the front line, because we care about popularity and how we come across. So
Mm-hmm.
if they can give us a spotlight and some money, we will give up ownership and just choose to create, and they will feed off our creative energy, our creative abilities, and monetize it, whilst we just give and give and give, and they make the real money, and then they give us, you know, um,
Crumbs.
tiny piece of the pie, crumbs, and we're like, oh, I made it now. I used to be this, but now I'm this. But you like, you're eating the crumbs and you're happy, but you're not seeing the food that's on the table, and that's what it comes down to, especially in the music industry. But most people want to become musicians just because there is money in it, but you know, they don't see that the money that they're getting from creating this content is only the crumbs of it.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah.
That's really true because um, there was someone that was like, we haven't really advanced in the dollar, how much we're worth in comparison to like years ago, because years ago, people wouldn't take just the crumbs. They would like fight for more. But us, we just, like you said, we just see the crumbs. They're like, oh, okay, this is what we're getting. Not really noticing that like the whole pie is being hidden from us. We just see the crumbs and we just go with it because we believe that that's the best way to do it.
Yeah, and it's also where we are as a people and a mindset. We see like the fame, like we want it quick, and building is kind of hard for us because we've been down so long. We
Mm-hmm.
want it, so we're not working for it for our children, we're working for it for us. So we're compromising our you know, we're compromising a lot so we can experience it, because we're just like, no, we've been down for so long. My mom's mom, my mom's mom's mom, like, no, I'm changing it. So you go in head first and you relinquish all ownership rights. And it kind of reminds me of Dave Chappelle, and he was recently going off about how he doesn't own any of his old content,
Mm-hmm.
and he really wasn't making any money of it because he sold his I'm not really sure if I'm saying it 100% right, but he sold his right to use his name or make money off
Mm-hmm.
of his name. So anything he does, the money goes to the people who own that. Um, and this is anywhere. It's not just on Earth, anywhere in the universe, and that's what his contract said. So they own his name throughout the universe, not just Earth,
Mm-hmm.
the universe. So like, we have to understand that ownership is very important, because when it comes down to it, they could be they have you and is in
Mm-hmm.
contract.
Wow, that's a real bind right there. He
Universe.
can't do anything without basically permission. He can't really do like, wow, that's crazy.
Yeah,
And that happens a lot to artists.
exactly. It's
And
it does.
and I also noticed that like I just feel like sometimes relating to the crumb, sometimes we just see the dollar, the little dollar dangling in our faces, and we don't really realize anything else. Because I did notice that there's some black-owned hair companies that used to make hair products, and like they were black-owned, and then another company bought it out, or other white company or something bought it out. And so now like the person has the money, but like the company is not even black owned anymore. So every time you spend the money, instead of them getting like most of the profit, it goes to whoever bought that. So that the money was in the black community at first, but then like because they sold their company to a white person, that money goes now to a white community.
Yeah, and I don't mean to call out any brands, but Shea Moisture, I know that that's one, and it's just so, because we still believe that it's black owned, because it was founded by black people, but that's not the
Mm-hmm.
case. What what these what white investors do, they stalk upon, you know, black brands that have, you know, hit in a way in the black community, like we're like, oh, it's black created, so we have a place for it in our hearts. And they prey upon these people and they offer them money, and they're like, oh yeah, definitely for this business, I'm selling it to you. And now it's white owned and we still believe it's black owned.
Mm-hmm.
And then they come in and they also compromise the integrity of the products by, you know, changing the ingredients. And it's just a lot that they do, but they do prey upon businesses, especially within the black community, that they know we spend money on, because they know that we will spend money on hair care products. It's gonna be a thing that will never change.
Mm-hmm.
So they buy these companies.
Yeah, they already saw, like, how profitable it was. That's why they bought it in the first place. If they didn't see the profit or how much potential it had, they would have never bought it. But like the person that created it probably didn't see that it had a lot of potential and got offered this amount of money that I'm assuming, they allegedly never seen, and then they're like, oh, okay, definitely, I'll sell it. I'll sell my company.
Exactly, because it's like you hit the jackpot. How it can't get any better than this, but they know because they've been doing this for so long that like this is just the beginning, and
Mm-hmm.
let it go at just the beginning. And also, it could just be their ability to not be know how to run a business as well.
Mm. Allegedly.
Yeah,
you know
allegedly.
if we ever get famous, you don't want to get sued or anything.
Allegedly.
But I wanted to like, why do you think the black community is so poor? Like, I feel like there's so many different reasons. One, starting off with our mindset, but why do you think we're so poor as a community? We're not like individually, people are not poor, obviously, but like, why do you think we're like we only last the money only lasts 6 hours in our community?
I think because we don't think as one. Um, we don't think on a community level. We think on me and mine's level, and every man for themselves. And in the Jewish community, that's just not how it is. So they're able to build together. In the white community, they have each other's backs. Asian community, they have each other's backs. But for us, it's me and mine, solely me, solely my family. And as soon as you're out of it, as soon as one individual's out of that part, they just sit happy. And
Mm.
that's definitely why, as a community, we have individuals that are doing good, but well, as a community, we're not doing good, but we have individuals that are thriving.
Yeah, I think from what you said, it's because like you've been so broken down to just be so separated. We've been separated by skin tone, we've been separated by hair texture. We're the group that has been preyed on and been separated by any little thing that we can think of. So it's just really hard for us to come together because all these things have been able to separate us in so many different scales and so many different levels. And it's just hard for us to be a collective sometimes.
100%. And it's something that we need to discuss as a people as well, coming together and putting our differences aside, because we can argue and go back and forth on why people feel this way and why they're entitled to feel it that way, and it's never going to get solved. So we do need to bury that hatchet of being separated and just come together. But it's a very hard task to do, when it's being is at this point, some of it is DNA, is embedded in our DNA,
Hmm.
to hate each other because it's been going on for so long. I'm pretty sure it's manifested in our DNA to just kind of have some, you know, animosity against each other. But it's something that we need to work on, because at the end of the day, it's only us who's gonna change it. Because no white person's gonna come and be like, "Oh my gosh, your community's so divided. Let me help." No, we need to put that aside and start doing better.
That's definitely true. And I also think that a lack of equality in knowledge plays a part into it because since the beginning of time that we've been in this country particularly, we have not had equality. We've like, let me see how I can put this into perspective. We're like in a race. We're running a race,
Mm-hmm.
but we have so much weight on us that we're the last person in the race. That's how I feel it is, because since we've been in here, everyone else had like an education before us. Like the white people were getting education before us, so we were delayed with our educations. We were delayed with achieving quotation mark equality, because I still don't feel like we're equal in the United States. Like all this stuff is happening, I still don't feel like we're equal, especially financially. We couldn't own homes, we couldn't own anything at a point for like for so long. We couldn't own anything. So I feel like that plays into a part of it as well.
And I agree with that. And I think a bigger part of it is that we're running a race that isn't even meant for us. Like, we don't even know why we're running this race.
Mm,
We were displaced and thrown into a culture or a setting that just wasn't us, and we're told to just do. And that's why I think we're so heavy, because we're trying to compete with, it's like imposter syndrome. We're trying to compete against people and act like them, but we aren't that way. And that's why I think it's very hard for us. I don't think we should be competing at all, or we should even be running the race. We should just, say we're different as people. Um,
mhm,
we don't want to compete, and we should build from our own. I think that's very important, because even as an individual, sometimes you might find it hard to live up to society standards because you're just not who society wants you to be. And I feel like that's the black community. We're in a race, but we're not who they're telling us to be, and it's hard for us to do it that way. And I think we should just stop competing and make a whole lane for ourselves.
mhm. Okay, I see where you're coming from. Yeah, I definitely agree with that. And I also think like with that, like when we actually make a race of ourselves, we should invest more, because the last lack of investment in black things, actually, like we were talking about earlier, ownership, lack of investment in black things can actually contribute to us being a poor community, because
Exactly.
we're not investing back into our own stuff. We're investing in everything else but our own. Like when I was looking at the Jewish community versus the black community, I saw that like from an outside perspective, that the black community kind of spend money on things that are more flashier, like designer brands and all cars and all this stuff that are not real investments. But like the Jewish community, they spend money on things that actually help them advance in their community. And that's why they're like one of the most thriving communities of people, even though they've been oppressed as well.
Exactly. I definitely agree with that. It's also our mindset on money, how to deal with it when we get money. And I think that's why how to deal with money when we get money. And I think that's why normalizing conversations on how to handle money, what to do with money, and money period in the black community is a very smart thing to do, because it's not something that we don't have financial discussions. Every time we are discussing it about pop culture, why people are stealing our hairstyles and our sounds and our looks, but it's never about finances, and that's very important. We don't know how to spend money, and we need to talk about it.
Do you think like a fear of money can contribute to the reason why we're like kind of displaced in this race?
I think um, I think a fear of money can contribute, but I think the fear of money stems from the lack of exposure, it or it just not being normalized in our community. The fact that money's always been a taboo subject. That's where the fear stems from. It's just lack of discussion, lack of exposure. Because I think once you normalize it, there's going to be no reason for people to fear it.
Okay, so learning a new word of the day. The fear of money is called chromatophobia.
Oh.
It's yeah, I'm learning something new. It's just people having an extreme fear of money. So for me, I think it's generational. So I think like when some events had occurred where Black people were investing their money, because I don't know if you've ever heard of Freedman Bank. So Freedman Bank was a bank that was kind of established for like soldier, like I think it was soldiers or veterans, basically veterans, for Black veterans to like basically put their money and save their money there. So it was ran from like 1865 to 1874, so about 9 years or so. And Frederick Douglass at the time was like a millionaire. Like he had a lot of money. So to help the bank, he put his money in there, and then there was other people that had their money in there, but the bank was not fairly assured. So like everyone else lost their money. So the reason why I'm saying that is like, what if like some people's family was the ones that are investing money in that bank, and then they just lost their money, and it's just like a fear in them. It's like every time we try to do something, we're losing money, we're losing money. So it's like, oh, my don't I'm not gonna put my money in the bank. I'm not gonna do anything with my money. I don't feel like investing my money. It's just like the fear of being burnt can be something that can be passed down.
And I agree with that. I also think it's also a way of looking at failures. If you look at you losing money as a life-defining situation or scenario, you're gonna fear it and you're gonna pass it down. But if you look at it as it's something that happened, and next time we need to do better, let's look deeper into it. Why did this happen? What can we do to negate that? So we missed this part. Let's start again and come up and regroup, rethink, recalibrate. I think it's also the mindset on failure, how you handle failure too. And because white these really big white companies, white owned, Jewish owned companies have failed at some point. It wasn't just, they started, it went great. There were failures, but it's how they handle those failures, and I think it's also how we handle failures. We just encounter a roadblock and we think, oh, it's the end.
Mm,
It's a hurdle, but it's not the end. And if you treat it as the end, it's gonna be a fear getting
mm.
over that hurdle.
I don't necessarily think it's only like the fear of money from just like one event. It can just be like that fear of money plus post-traumatic slavery syndrome added to it, that just makes people like have that type of inverse relationship with money in a way.
So, speaking, moving on from that topic, um, that Black people actually had African Americans. We had thriving communities, and we were doing very well. And as you were saying, sometimes we encounter a situation that makes us, fearful to carry on. And we had communities that were thriving, and things happened to those communities, um, hate crimes, especially towards us, were hate crimes were done, committed, and our communities were taken away from us. So we did want to speak on that, just to show that, we've done it before.
Mhm. So one of the most thriving communities that people might be familiar with is Tulsa, and or Black Wall Street, and it was in 1921 that there was a Tulsa massacre. So a little background about Tulsa is that there's a man by the name of O.W. Gurley, I believe, and he purchased about 40 acres of land, and he was able to sell those 40 acres of land to Black people. So Black people were able to have their own communities. They had like their own theaters, their own banks, the hotels, homes, etc. They just had like a little area just for them. So there was this white woman that was like she was raped by a Black man, which they didn't even wait until they had confirmation that she was actually raped, because like white people were already jealous of Black people. They stormed the little community and burned everything down, killing black people and basically destroyed everything that black people had built in this community that was designed for their own financial advancement. It was like, okay, they can survive without us, or they're a threat to us. They're like getting up there financially. Let's destroy them. It was basic mostly stemmed from jealousy from white people that didn't want to see black people doing anything that could advance them as a group.
I think above all, fear as well, and because what are you gonna do? Like a black man that once was under your control, like under your whip, now has more money than you. Their communities are doing great. So when they get the money, what are they gonna turn around and do? Shit, let's keep them down. It's fearful. Like the people that we have done dirty, the people that we oppressed are now building. What are they gonna turn around and do? And the rape story just sounds like an Emmett Till rape story, just a lie. And I never want to come and act like someone who cries rape is lying, because I just never want to jump to that, because
Mm-hmm.
you never know. But in this case, I just have to think about that.
Yeah, and I noticed that when I was doing research on different black communities that were thriving, that was the common cause. Like someone would call rape and then they would just go storm. It was like an excuse. Okay, they already had like the matches light up and everything, but that as soon as someone said rape, the gasoline was just there to burn everything down. They already had their ammunitions already. They just needed that little push to just be like, okay, go and destroy everything. And that's what I feel like happened in a lot of these different communities.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that.
There's other communities that are not really as famous. So there's another community. It was established in Wellington, North Carolina. So in that community, it was around like, 1898, like during those times, there were black people that were elected official. They were doing pretty decent for themselves. So at that time, the Democratic Party, which was the right wing at that time, because the parties had switched at some point, can't really recall what point. So they were mostly the white supremacist group.
Mm.
So they didn't like the fact that there were black people elected in power. So in order for them to feel like they were stopping economic power of black people, so they initiated act of terrorism. They took over the area. They actually appointed white men more work positions, and they killed black people. They basically put a lot of fear in black people, and some of them fled the area. So what happened was that they were saying basically, I believe that black men were raping white women or whatever. So the black man wrote that it's the fact that white women like black men or want black men. So they didn't really like that. And they were looking for him, but fortunately for him, he had escaped. But they set fire to the printing press and just basically killed the black residents who were terrorizing. And I think that's the place that they had written some X's on the areas that black people were living, or the houses that had black people, so they can target them, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, so the next one is Atlanta massacre, which had occurred in 1906. So the reason why this massacre occurred was that white people in those areas were threatened by the upward mobility of black people, so they went into the communities and just killed black people. And that's basically what happened. And the final community that I actually researched was Woodswood, Florida. I actually first heard of Woodswood, Florida from one of my friends. She told me that it was a black thriving community that was in Florida. So Woodswood, Florida was basically like a Tulsa. It had their own stuff. It was just something for black people created for black people to thrive in their own community. So the story went that a white woman claimed she was assaulted by a black man, and they went into town to find this black man. They said like, oh, it was another area. They said the black man was hiding in Woodswood because that was a black town. So they went into a town and they actually hanged another black man that said he knew about the rape, like all the time. The whole time the gag is, let me not use that, scratch it off. because that's Kiki Palmer's stuff. But the story was that the white woman wasn't actually raped by a black man. They said that somebody said and assumed that the white woman had an affair with another white man and blaming it on a black man. So when they believe that happened, they'll believe anything a white woman will say, they'll believe it, run with it, regardless, because they already have the hate in their heart to actually go into those communities and kill people.
Wow, that's so crazy.
Yeah.
The fact that it happened in a whole other town and then they went to a black town and
Hmm.
did that just shows that it was just completely out of proportion. And yeah, it just shows the hate.
Yeah, and actually, a fun fact is that John Singleton actually made a movie called Woodward, and if you guys have any time, check it out. Also, check it out too because I've never watched it, and from doing my research, I've like that's when I found out about it. But I've known about the community from a friend.
Mm, that's so
Yeah, they said like some of the people had fled to like Gainesville and stuff like that. It's something that happened around like where we're from. We're from Florida.
yeah, not too far from Gainesville right now.
Yeah. Yeah, that's all I have. Quick intermission.
Cause I'm a young intellect. I'm a young intellect. I'm a young intellect. I'm a young intellect. Pay me my respect.
So we wanted to shed a light on some people that contributed to advancement of Black people, but like they're not as popular as everyone else. So there was a person that actually refused to sit at the back of the bus before Rosa Parks, and her name was Claudette Colvin. She was 15 at the time, and I believe that she was pregnant, and she was actually kind of non-ambiguous looking, so she was a typical Black woman as compared to Rosa Parks. Rosa Parks was a very, not ambiguous, but she was light skinned. She was, she had a different course. She had a different hair texture. So, for her, she was a better picture for the movement in comparison to someone that was 15 and having a child.
And
I
I was
just wanted to shed
also
a light. Thank you so much, Colette Colvin, for your contribution, as well as Rosa Parks. Rosa Parks was very essential, but Colette was also essential, and we wanted to share light and educate you guys on a little fun fact in history.
yes, thank you for that. I also heard Rosa Parks, I think, had a white grandparent or something, or a very notorious family member who was very well respected, and that
Hmm.
might have played a part in it. Um, but back to the episode. Um, so from where Sam left off, where she was um, naming thriving Black communities in the past, we just wanted to name some current thriving Black communities, and we do want to say that they are different today because back in those days, the community that she mentioned, um, Black people weren't allowed in certain areas. They weren't allowed to shop in certain shops that were white owned. So we had to fend for ourselves and build our own communities. So these communities, the ones that Sam mentioned, were really Black owned communities where we would set up shop, and our dollar was in our communities for a very long time. Our money was circulating in our communities for a longer time. But in comparison to where we are today, these communities that we're mentioning are thriving for us right now. And one of them was on the list before, which is Atlanta, Georgia. And we know that Atlanta is, they call it like the,
Atlanta.
yeah, they call it the Black Millionaires Squad. It's very, it's a very great place for Black people to go and thrive. There are many Black millionaires and a few Black billionaires too. So
There's a lot of Black podcasters from Atlanta. That's somewhere I want to go in the future. And Washington D.C. is actually a place that Black people are thriving as well economically.
yes, I actually didn't know that Washington D.C. was tied with Atlanta when I googled it. It was
Mm-hmm.
tied with Atlanta. I was like, oh, I didn't know that, but it
Mm.
definitely has those big areas. So that's very understandable.
Yeah, and like in Texas, Austin, Texas is also another place that you can find a lot of thriving Black people.
Yes, Austin, Texas, and also Baltimore is another city. So definitely, if you are in these areas or wanted to move to an area with thriving Black people there, these are some cities, and they're also more. So you can do your research, but these are a few cities
Yeah,
doing great.
add add Houston to it as well. It's up there.
Mm,
Somewhere else I would like to live one of these days.
and it shall come true.
Oh, thank you. Okay, so do you know or are you informed on like the current Black economic status in comparison to the history?
I believe I am a little bit from the little that I have researched, and according to the Road to Zero Wealth report published by Prosperity Now and the Institute of Policy Studies, the median wealth of Black Americans will fall to zero by 2053 if the current trend continues. So the median wealth. So if the median wealth is zero, what is the lowest wealth? That means we are going to be in debt. And this is 2053. So this is like 30 years out, just over 30 years out. So it just shows, and that's if the current trend continues. So it shows that um, as a community, we are not increasing in wealth because
Mm-hmm.
the current trend is going down. So the wealth gap is increasing between Black and white people, and the wealth gap was actually closer in the 60s than it is now. So white people are becoming richer as a community, and we're becoming poorer as a community as time goes on.
Oh wow. And that's funny. I was watching a video and this person was like the Black man's net worth is only $5. And then in comparison, the Black woman's net worth and like not like one person, because you know some people are billionaires out here, millionaires, and they have money. But like overall it's like $5. And for the Black woman it's 67 cents. And I was like, that's really crazy. And they're basically said we have not made any improvement from the time of of discrimination, segregation to now. Like
And
the improvement is like very non-existent.
I think it's very important to highlight that you said like not the average but the median. And the reason why we use the median is because when you take the average, it really there are really some anomalies in the Black community. Like we do have Black billionaires, but it's only a few, and we do have really rich Black people, but it's only a few. So when you have those anomalies like that, you use the median to calculate it, so it gives a more accurate reading. People might be saying, but we have more millionaires, but we're not aware of the other side of it. There are people getting poorer whilst other people are getting richer too. So
Mm-hmm. That's facts. That's facts.
and another update on the current Black economic status compared to history is that number of Black businesses are going down, and it might be increasing slightly now, but from what it was in the past, it has reduced a whole lot because, as I mentioned before, we were forced to have our own businesses because we were not allowed to shop in other people's businesses because of discrimination. Um, but now that we are allowed to shop in other people's businesses, we believe that the quality of their products are better than ours, and we just find it convenient that they have their stuff set up, so we
Mm.
just buy from them.
So So now we believe that the quality of life is better. Would you say the quality of life is better or not really any improvements?
I think it's what you define the quality of life to be. And I think that we we put emphasis on our quality of living depending on how we are treated in society,
Mm-hmm.
but we don't understand that how we are treated in society is how can be changed depending on how we come across. So if we build a status for ourselves, we will be treated better in society. But we are just trying to be treated better in society because we're humans and we believe humans should be treated fairly and all these lovely la di da flower stories. But that's just not how it goes when we are living amongst people who could enslave a whole amount of people, who could commit a Holocaust, who could massacre millions of Native Americans. All this human rights stuff isn't really sinking in their heads at all. So
Yes.
we need another way of getting our um, getting better treatment, and we should go the financial route because I think once we get money, we can start talking.
Mm-hmm. That is true. Yeah, and it's like in their heads too, they might think, oh, they don't have lawyers, they won't be able, they don't have enough money to go through this process. So it's easy to kill them off.
Exactly. And
Finances are very important. Like this saying, to money is truly power. Because when you see some of the most powerful people, they have a lot of money. I'm not saying all of them, but usually.
it's very true. And especially in the society, and if we're talking about respect and how we're treated in society, the money is power. If you're someone who doesn't care about all of that, then ignore this and live your life. But if you want, if you are unhappy with how we are being treated as a community, as a people in society, then we have to get our money up. That's it.
That's true. That's true. Yeah, you don't really see them doing that to other communities, even though those communities might experience racism or whatever, but not in a global scale as we do, and not as often as we do, and not as brutal as we do, because those communities are doing fairly well for themselves as a community.
Exactly. And another way that we are how we're doing economically in comparison to history is black home ownership, and it is reducing. The current gap is 30% between black and white home ownership. So there's a 30% gap between the amount of black people who own homes and white people who own homes, and this gap is larger than it was in 1968 when housing discrimination was legal.
Okay, that's an interesting fact.
Yeah,
I wouldn't have known anything about that. In my eyes, I would say, like, before doing some of this research, in my eyes, I was like, oh yeah, black people as a group are advancing. No, black people individually are doing better for themselves, but as a group, we're still in the same boat that we were.
we're in a uglier boat than we were. And in and another the last fact would be in 2019 the median White House hold income or wealth was $188,200, which is 7 times that of the typical black household wealth, which is $24,100.
No,
Yeah,
that's a lot of money. I can't count that high.
yeah.
Yet,
So
it's a mental thing too, because when you have a broke mentality, you will forever be broke.
exactly,
But once you have like a rich mentality, regardless if you're broke right now, you will be rich.
that is
Whatever rich is to, yeah. It could be whatever rich is to you, but like if your mentality is not slapping you, your mentality is actually an anchor. Your mentality can basically sink you to the bottom of the ocean if you let it. But
Exactly.
sometimes, yeah, you can turn your mentality into a floating what's it called, a floating I
But,
can't remember the word, a floating thing, and then you float at the top.
uh,
The floating device, and you can turn it into a floating device, and you float at the top until you can get out of that water.
exactly. And I think it'll be great to just talk about now, since we've spoken about, you know, a lot, how can we improve as a community? And that's a question for you. What are some things that you think we can do as a community to improve?
I think how we can improve is to learn more about group economics, how like the money can circulate within our own groups, how like we can contribute more to our group, how we can establish more businesses, how we can educate ourselves more. And I especially think that we should educate our children because the children is the future. I think like financial literacy should be taught probably at school or at home because schools are not doing it. So I think parents should take the responsibility to teach themselves and then teach their children and set their children to actually succeed. So one of my coworkers was talking about how like she's helping her kid being more financially. So her and her husband have like I think they've done something. I think they're like taking credit cards in their names and stuff like that, paying it off. So building the kids' credit up. So as they get older, they have good credit.
Mm, yeah, and that's very good. Doing things, especially as an adult, or or an adult with kids, or someone who is planning to have kids, taking those steps to ensure your child's financial future. Yeah, it's great. And you mentioned something very important, that you shouldn't be relying on schools to teach this to your children, because they didn't teach it to us, they didn't teach it to our grandparents, so we should stop expecting this from them. We should
Mm-hmm.
take it into our own hands and start teaching, financially educating our children. That is very important. And I also think, uh, as you said, I also think that openly discussing finances in households is also very important, because some people feel like hiding finances from kids gives them a great childhood, but then what does it do to them in their adulthood? It makes them just not aware of how important finances are. So having these open discussions is very important, not just for the kids, but for you as an adult, to openly discuss finances and deal with them as a unit, rather than just you and your partner, or you hiding it from your partner, because a family is supposed to be a family. It's supposed to work as one.
Mm-hmm. And I think like we should buy more black. Not saying like don't buy from other group of people or like segregate or anything. I just think we should give more back more to our community as well because we're buying from every other community but not our own. And also like whenever we decide to support community, we're always expecting less or like expecting more for less because we're always asking for like discounts and stuff like that. Not me specifically or some other people, but asking for discount or saying like, oh, the service is not up to par, but going to McDonald's every single day and it's not up to par as well. So I feel like sometimes we accept mediocre, but not from our own people. We accept mediocre from everyone else except our own people. And I think that's something that needs to stop. If you're going to accept mediocre, might as well have the same energy for everyone else.
Exactly, and I think that with buying black, we need to have more patience for black-owned businesses, especially because we're a little bit behind in setting up our businesses. White people, their parents had businesses, they can become part of their parents' businesses, and it's normal for them. But for us, it's something that we're trying to do. So having more grace, even if they do mess up on something, being like, well, I'm not about to out you. I'm not about to come out and bash your business in front of everyone and ruin you and your potential, your family and our community. Like, hold your tongue with it and just unless they're deliberately doing something, just be patient.
Hmm. And I found out that like only 2 cents of a dollar is actually spent on like the in the black community for like black businesses or black anything, black owned anything. So there was a research that said like if we actually increase that 2 cents, or it was in a video, and make it 10 cents that we give back out of each dollar that we spent to our own community, that we create 1 million jobs within our own community for people like us.
And that's great. And I think we need to figure out how to do that, because I think one thing is that we throw a lot of information out there, but we don't think of, okay, how can we get from that point to this point.
Mm,
So figuring out how will be great.
that's true. That's a good point. And I think that's like just having people that know. I feel like sometimes we have people that know how to do it, but like some people are not willing to expand their knowledge.
Mm, that is very true. Some people feel like they've got it and everyone else should just get it. Sometimes you are going to have to play that role as a teacher. People, sometimes you know it and other people don't, and you're going to have to teach. It's
Mm-hmm.
okay. It's not that everyone should understand it, because if everyone doesn't understand it and you're the only one, it doesn't mean that it's for you. It means that maybe you're teacher of that information, you're the gatekeeper of that information, you should spread it. um, so yeah, and also we should also be willing to learn as people, and be patient.
Mm-hmm. And like read a book on finances and
Exactly.
find out more information. And I feel like a lot of people sometimes how they get information is by reading books, watching YouTube. You can honestly, even if somebody doesn't want to teach you, I feel like there's a way for you to learn yourself.
Yeah, definitely, especially with the amount of information that's out there today. Like as you mentioned, YouTube, the internet, the courses out there. So if someone's not willing to teach you, go find it.
And I think like how we can also improve is by purchasing with intent instead of frivolous spending. I know a lot of people might feel hurt, but I do, like earlier I said, I do think we spend more money into things, into like us looking a certain way than us being a certain way. I feel like sometimes we are focused on looking rich instead of like actually being rich.
I agree with that. And debt management is important as well, because we often get credit cards, loan money, and we don't. We just end up in huge amounts of debt. We don't know how to manage it, pay it back, and we end up owing, and then it messes up our credit, then it messes up how we can build in the future. So debt management is a very important way for us to do better, because I believe we have a lot as a community, we have large amounts of debt.
Okay, yeah, budgeting can come into play for it. Like budget how you spend your money. Don't just be like, okay, then I have this money. You know, you get money and then like it's out of your hand in like 2.5 seconds.
Yeah.
Like I've known people that like would get a good amount of I actually knew someone that would get a good amount of money. They aren't really working, and then like the next second, I'm like, "What's the money that you just got?" They're like, "Oh, it's gone." It's like, what are you doing? Like you're not even saving your money. Like your account is in negatives. Like you need to do better at managing your money, because just spending all that money is like not even thinking about the future is gonna get you in a lot of troubles.
That's very true, and it kind of ties into purchasing with intent. And you can you can spend, but make sure you're spending money that you have and is available for you to spend. Don't spend money that is needed somewhere else and you might fall short. So
Mm-hmm.
budgeting, as Sam said, budget, please.
Yeah, like I said, more concerned with looking. Not all, but some people will definitely fall into this category of more concerning at looking rich than actually being rich. Yeah, using their money on like materialistic things, but not really using it to something that they actually need, like maybe rent or something. That's where budgeting comes from. Like if you don't have the money, I say like in my head, if you don't have it, don't spend what you don't have. Don't spend something to make other people look at your certain way. Don't spend money and expecting external validation from others.
Yeah, because that's crazy. Imagine like everyone telling you that you look good, but then you're like 3 months behind on rent. Like, I'd rather look crazy as hell and have my rent paid for 5 years and
Mm-hmm.
be like, let's make smart decisions. And another way is also seeking a financial advisor. I would recommend a black one. So whilst you're getting your finances into place, you're also investing back into the community and into our own people. Um, but these people will give you financial advice, help you budget, help you debt management. And because it's not something that all of us know how to do, if you go to a financial advisor, and you don't even need to get an expensive one, um, something that's in your budget, but if you find that you're not budgeting well and you're spending money and money's just coming out of your pockets and you you don't purchase with intent, getting a financial advisor is a great investment.
Mm-hmm.
So do that.
I definitely agree. You know, another thing you can do is start a family business, get everybody involved, and you guys are all making money, and you guys are family. You can trust each other, and just the money will be passed down from generation to generation if we make smart business decisions.
And to reiterate, building in our own communities and thinking on a community level. There's a quote saying that a team or a group is only as strong as their weakest member. So let's stop thinking like, because we always refer to Jay-Z and Beyonce, even though they're not the richest black people, but they got money. Um, we're not all on Jay-Z and Beyonce's level. They're people who are really living in poverty, black children who barely have any food on the table. So we need to think as community, not as just this individual has money now, that individual has money now, that individual has money now. Let's look at our poor communities and go in them, or start doing for our communities.
Amen to that. Not trying to, the episode was not intended to attack or make anybody feel any type of way. It's just to educate and talk about something that no one really talks about. Let's be honest, we really don't talk about stuff like that at all. Like, I didn't know a lot of these information until, like, I started doing research for myself, and that's when I figured a lot of things out. So let's research, be open-minded, and yeah.
I definitely agree. It's definitely not an attack. I think it's a great conversation to be had just because it normalizes a conversation that we normally don't have, and something that needs to happen because like we just finances for us are just such a hard area. And I think we can talk about things that we're really good at, or talk about things that we need to improve that will help us. And I think that this section is a lot more beneficial to us as a community. And nowhere are my finances perfect, but it's something I notice that we need to normalize. These are
Mhm.
conversations we need to have with our siblings, our parents, our children, our everybody, just because it is that important. Thank you for joining us today on the Young Intellect podcast. We hope you enjoy the show and tell a friend to tell a friend about us. And make sure you take care of yourself and your mind.
Cause I'm a young intellect. I'm a young intellect. I'm a young intellect.